Good day everyone, I'm Bernadette. For Chapter 2, we will be discussing interpreting the development of the visitor attraction product. This chapter aims to show how the nature of the visitor attraction product has changed over time, explain the nature of visitor attraction development, and explore the concept of the market imagescape mix and present a way to evaluate attractions based on these dimensions, and discuss the criteria which can determine the success or otherwise of visitors attraction. So as a general definition, a visitor attraction is a focus for recreational and increasingly educational activity undertaken by both day and stay visitors and frequently shared with the domestic resident population. Within any society, the range of visitor attractions is extensive. Every municipality and rural district boasts at least one attraction, adding to its appeal as a destination. They are often the reason for visiting a destination and provide activities and experiences, and importantly for the visitor when he or she returns home. The visible signs of consumption. From a sociological perspective, visitor attractions are consumed through sightseeing and do not exist without this. As stated by Kirshner, there are numerous variations in respect of the product concept or creativity of the design and its appeal. This will be termed the imagescape to match the use of the word Imagineers by Disney Corporation when describing its designers. The concept is based on the fact that all attractions in some part measure their performance by the numbers of visitors, for which the output is a visitor experience. The object is to generate memorable mood benefits for the visitor and in consequence attachment, leading to repeat visits and positive recommendations. To enhance the experience, the modern approach is to place tangible objects, say a thrill ride or a collection of artifacts within the context of a specific theme or image in particular setting or environment. Hence the word imagescape. It is possible to classify attractions along a number of two different dimensions: ownership, capacity, market or catchment area, permanency, and type. The simplest classification by type is to group attractions into those that are gifts of nature and those which are human-made. The former include the landscape, climate, vegetation, forest, and wildlife embodied in, say, country parks in Britain, lakes in Canada, mountains in Switzerland, the coast in Spain, or game reserves in Africa. Among the most well-known, these are the Walt Disney Parks, the imagescapes originating in California, but scenes reproduced in Florida, Tokyo, Paris, and Hong Kong, with one further park due to open soon in Shanghai. Attraction product. In the post-industrial society that Pine and Gilmore label the experience economy, it is argued that the production system should be re-engineered to add value through marketing experiences. This implies producing services with attached goods rather than the traditional mass production process in which commodities are uniformly produced and sold on price. In fact, Pine and Gilmore draw many of these examples in their work from the leisure industry. Following this line of reasoning, Figure 2.1 presents an abstract construction of an attraction product where the core is imagescape, the purpose of which is to convey the essence of the visitor experience to the potential market. Thus, the intangible output of a constructed imagescape is central to the visitor experience. The core is surrounded by commodities and services which are combined to add value or support the imagescape. These functional aspects of theming, namely entertainment, education, aesthetics, and escapism. These four aspects are embodied in all truly successful visitor attractions, be they in the private domain or in the non-commercial sector. When presenting the core, the diversity of imagescape themes for visitor attraction is beyond doubt extensive. As indicated in Table 2.1, the main attractions are still the wonders of the natural and physical world and the endeavors of human society, including, albeit to a much smaller extent, dark subjects that deal with what are considered to be behavior incursions, such as the grim consequences of war, crime and punishment, and the unusual, for example, catastrophes, and erotic. While the broad themes indicated in Table 2.1 may be globally enduring, their representation within the context of an imagescape may not be. The acceptance of the content and style of production of the imagescape is determined by fashion, which has its own dynamic that is born out of the spirit of inquiry in competition within society to alter its patterns of consumption and value system. Thus, animals in captivity in the form of zoos or safari parks are no longer acceptable to many people, and there is a marked decline of interest in static attractions and object-oriented museums unless they are national collections as stated by Swarbrick. Despite the intrinsic value of historic buildings and collections presentation, interpretation and good support facilities have become increasingly important. To complete the attraction product, the core imagescape in Figure 2.1 is supported by facilities such as retailing, catering, cloakrooms, first aid, special needs access, internal transport and car parking, as well as an augmented imagescape designed to ensure that all customers' experiential requirements are met. For example, visitor orientation queue entertainment complaints handling puppet characters, shows, presentations, and so on. A significant aspect of the core of the attraction product, which is sadly lacking in many visitor attractions, is the encouragement of repeat visits. This is a necessary requirement for long-term success, unless the market for the experience is global, which therefore provides a catchment population that is to all intents and purposes infinite in size, since it is continually being replenished. This, of course, may not be an issue with public attractions that are free, depending on whether or not visitor numbers are used as a performance indicator. Entertainment attractions such as cinemas and theaters were able to survive on one-time only purchases of the experience because they continually change the core attraction. Meanwhile, theme parks embody thrill rides for which there is a repetitive demand that they reinforce with a rolling program of replacement and retheming to persuade their customers to return. Leisure shopping facilities continually replace their merchandise in line with fashion, but for the majority of visitor attractions that were not built for such purposes, their ability to maintain attendances is functionally related to the size and dynamics of their market, as well as their capacities to alter the core imagescape and supplement it by special events, object-oriented, and other supporting features. To this extent, national museums are at a considerable advantage because the size of their collections enables them to change the imagescape. On the other hand, small attractions that are exhibiting collections, whether they are in the public or private domain, need to change their displays by, say, borrowing objects and works from elsewhere or to stage events in order to tempt visitors to return. Looking at the revenue side, a local residence privilege card, season tickets, and promotions such as allowing the local community free access if they bring a guest are all ways of encouraging attendance.
Good day everyone, I'm Claire. Let's talk about attraction development. Within different subject disciplines, the development of new commodities and services in marketplace is termed innovation in economics, new product development in marketing and management, and design in engineering. Invention may take place at any time, but innovation that is putting new product to the market comes about the upswing of the cycle when the economic climate looks favorable. The essence of Schumpeter's theory is that the vehicle of economic growth is creative destruction through innovation that disrupts existing technologies and creates new markets, collapsing old ones. The innovation process in terms of imagescape creation is therefore a gradation from situation of no adoption but rather controlled management to visitor attractions that are fashioned for purpose, which is very different from stereotypical image of monumental change as understood by Schumpeter's theory. The actuality of having spectrum of innovations with regard to visitor attraction is reflected also in pattern of ownership. In the public sector is more likely to take a stewardship role of what are considered to be national assets, where innovation is constrained, while private sector firms may be much more innovative because of the need to maintain contact of consumers and their position in the marketplace. The ownership indicate that most attractions that are non-corporate, which absolves them public shareholding constraint, while many are in the interpreting of the development of the visitor attraction product. In development process, there are only three things you need to know about attractions: visitors, visitors, visitors. Once paying visitors are introduced to attractions in the public and voluntary sectors, that pressures builds up for the visitor experience in support of admissions to become the marketed output as in the commercial sector. This is something that is often resisted by the curatorial side of these attractions, who are rightly concerned about the authenticity of the visitor experience. For example, in the 1980s, Victoria and Albert Museum was heavily criticized for using the market strapline, Ace Cafe with rather nice museum attached, to stimulate the reappraisal of the museum by the public, a marketing strategy that would be considered quite acceptable today. But although these changes bring the public and voluntary sectors closer to the market, their mixture of ideological objects such as conservation, authenticity, and education, along with their charitable status and sunk capital costs, implies that they cannot be matched completely with commercially established visitors attractions. This is because the latter are seeking a return on capital invested and attempting to maintaining a strong, if not dominant, position in their marketplace. In key features, ideally the system is sequential, which begs the question of running order. Commercial logic dictates that the optimal path is market, imagescape, location. But given the fact that most attractions developments are limited by their types, condition of ownership, and location, this only applies to what are termed foodless attractions that have flexibility around all three aspects in order to ensure economic success. In comparison, there are limited adjustments that can be made to the imagescape of a country park because of the location is fixed and it has fairly unalterable intrinsic elements. This means that change is restricted to the adding support facilities to augment the imagescape, such as visitor center. Similarly, a mining museum that has a mine visit as a part of the attraction is tied by its location. What is important here is to recognize that location, market assessment, and imagescape are bound up with one another. Wildlife sanctuaries and other natural attractions do not want to be swamped by visitors. This brings the debate back to the ownership patterns and organizations' objectives. Because one, the commercial pathway to development is abandoned, financial viability may be difficult to attain.
Good day, I am Hailey and today I'm going to talk about regeneration. The regeneration and property development model typically follows a reverse pathway, location to imagescape, imagescape to market. In such cases where old industrial buildings, disused market halls, railway stations, and docks are located close to urban centers. Since leisure shopping is an increasingly important visitor to resident activity, there has been focus on specialty shopping. Facilities like convention center, an exhibition hall, or trade center and offices in order to attract commercial developers. In this way, tourism has replaced manufacturing and distribution industries which have left the inner core for more spacious and cheaper locations in the outskirts of the city. Thus, tourism has been recognized as a feasible economic option and catalyst for community regeneration. For example, the development of Baltimore's Inner Harbor from the 1960s. It became an inspiration for revitalization of decaying industrial waterfronts in other parts of the world, such as Albert Dock in Liverpool, Darling Harbour in Sydney, the Victoria and Alfred Wharf in Cape Town. In this way, tourism can become the glue that holds the area together, particularly where there is little else the local authority can do with such assets and when the object is to stabilize economic shrinkage by raising place image in order to attract private investment. From a pure attraction standpoint, the reverse pathway of regeneration strategies may carry a high degree of risk in that they can result in an outside-in project or project inflation. The former is used to describe an investment that goes from the physical structure to the imagescape. The latter is the case of most visitor attractions that appear to be flourishing. Where public authorities are involved, there is always a danger of project inflation in response to civic pride and the vainglory of local politicians. This results in exaggeration of employment creation to obtain development grants, increased complexity which boosts consultants' fees, and substantial capital structure to the benefit of the architects. Several millennium projects sponsored by the Heritage Lottery Fund in the UK have gone this way. Some have had to be closed, for example, the National Centre for Popular Music in Sheffield, the Centre of the Visual Arts in Cardiff, and the Earth Centre near Doncaster. Major capital projects should not be undertaken unless their market function is clear. Visitor displacement from other attractions has been considered and a proper feasibility study has been carried out so that the nature of the risk involved is thoroughly understood and accepted. In industrial developments, industrial visitor attractions tend to pursue a path, location to market, market to imagescape. In the first instance, natural association with the place of production dictates the location. For example, Universal Studios Hollywood opened in 1964, Cadbury World Burnville near Birmingham, UK opened in 1990, and Titlis Brewery Wharf Leeds, UK opened in 1994. Almost all of these attractions have developed from capitalizing on the demands of consumerate to visit the factory, brewery, studio, or distillery. Not all are successful. Titlis Brewery Wharf was closed in 2000 due to visitor numbers falling away. According to Grant, the imagescape of the attraction is built on consumer interest in the production and its history. In market imagescape mix, the great array of imagescapes has already been noted, but it is significant that they are inextricably bound up with assessment of the market, as indicated by the classifications given in this figure and vice versa. Thus, while there is a clear demand for entertainment attractions, success is related to the creativity of the design and its appeal. Both axes are defined from the stance of a developer of a new attraction project, whether in the commercial or not-for-profit sector or in some private-to-public partnership. For example, cultural events and heritage attractions yield both cultural as well as economic values, but there is no priori reason for these values to move in the same direction, and changes in the stock or nature of cultural assets will usually lead to the loss of that which is authentic through irreversibility. What is also important is scale. Thus, small attractions may offer only a single imagescape, often prescribed by the resource base, while created attractions like theme parks promote multiple imagescapes structured around different rides and features in order to achieve the required market penetration rates.
Good day, I am Jenna, and for the Me Too attractions, this is a common attraction experience linked to the first quadrant of the attraction market imagescape mix because this involves least risk, which in turn has implications for finance and operational viability. An example of this can be seen in the development of coal mining museums or heritage centers in the valleys of South Wales during the late 1980s, following the closure of the collieries according to One Hill. A number of developments went ahead in spite of survey evidence which suggested that only about 7% of visitors were likely to visit more than one mining attraction in the area. Politically, Me Too projects can always be justified on the basis of need, but whether it is possible to turn need into demand at a price which will make the project financially or economically viable is another question. There is always a danger that the Me Too approach can saturate the market and can result in non-viable attractions that end up wasting resources. For the Grand Inspiration attractions, one of the difficulties of starting attractions in the second quadrant is assessing whether the Grand Inspiration will work as a concept or whether it is simply the single genius approach to project development, which could be an indulgence that is unnecessarily or unrealistically costly in terms of what the market can afford. A common strategy in this area is to try to turn the project upside down by estimating the volume of visitors needed to make the project feasible at a price that the market is prepared to pay. Here, the classic example of such an attraction is the Disney theme parks, which have been a spectacular success. The innovation process in this quadrant should make the existing imagescape delivery style obsolete and is therefore radical in approach, yet it deals with existing market structures. While it may build competitive advantage and take market share from others, it does not destroy the competition, which may, in any case, have the opportunity to copy the new ideas. For the new version attractions, the innovation process here involves the opening up of new market opportunities while preserving the existing imagescape in content and format, having the effect of rejuvenating the existing attraction because the current public has become too familiar with the product or the market has moved on. In order to attain visitor targets, There is a need for substantial market research and forecasting to take account of both the short-term conditions, including economy, financial climate, and the political situation, and the longer-term includes demographics, social values and lifestyle, technology, climate, and environment. One example is a national museum with regional branches, or by extending the core product of the attraction through adding a theme park to a traditional zoo, as what has happened at Chessington World of Adventures near London. Clearly, product rejuvenation here is a defensive strategy to retain existing attendances, requiring careful monitoring of key market trends affecting attractions. These currently include the continued growth in multiple shorter vacations, the rise in the allocation of the household budget to quality leisure time, the increasing influence of children and the use of leisure time in families with both partners working, the growth in concern for environmental issues and the recognition of the need for sustainable environmental management practices, and the other leisure activity spending, namely in-home leisure, retailing, and computer systems.
Good day, I'm Sean. For Wonder Attractions, the term Wonder Attraction is used here to describe those very large projects that have major economic impacts on their location and are eagerly sought after as flagship enterprises. Maximum uncertainty holds in this quadrant because of the number of unknowns and often the scale of the project, which on the one hand deters competition but on the other increases financial exposure. However, this quadrant only applies to relatively few projects. Examples being Disneyland in California, Epcot, EPCOT opened in 1982, the Sydney Opera House opened in 1973, Baltimore's Inner Harbor, and the Millennium Dome. This is because well over 90% of all attractions are geared to fewer than 200,000 visitors, which minimizes the risk of scale in developed destinations. Governments, very large attraction operators, or major corporations within the leisure interest are the ones who fund projects of this kind. Commercial operators are careful to limit their financial exposure, so usually proceed with public sector support, both in terms of kind, usually land and cash, so as to spread the risk and help draw in external finance. The downfall of wonder projects on the financial side has commonly come from, first, too large capital costs making the project unfundable from the standpoint of raising equity to match debt. Delays in building or underestimation of construction costs, which led to serious cost overruns and the need for refinancing. Third, ignoring funders' demands by bringing them in at the end of all feasibility work when it would have been more appropriate to have them in at the beginning. Changing project specifications some way into its development, thus incurring step changes in cost and therefore overruns against the original budget. Lastly, in response to political enthusiasm, the project is oversold by inflating revenues and economics benefits and underestimating costs and social and environmental impacts, in the knowledge that the construction phase is irreversible. For wonder attractions, the innovation process can be one that departs from established imagescape delivery systems and sets down a new marketing agenda and communication strategy, which then becomes an inspiration for subsequent development. For successful attractions with visitor attractions covering such a wide setting and a mixture of ownership, it is a moot point as to whether anything can be concluded as to what constitutes successful innovation and development. But on the supposition that attendances and in certain circumstances membership are a performance target, then critical to the prospects of new attraction investments, whether they are low-risk Me Too developments or high-risk wonder projects, is how the creativity of the imagescape connects to the market. The imagescape does not have to be revolutionary as in the Schumpeterian concept of innovation. In fact, few are, but the imagescape needs to be flexible if the attraction has to rely on repeat visits to meet its performance targets. The creation of imagescape suggests that in those sectors of the economy where the marketed output is experiences, the transformation of invention to innovation cannot be compared to the processes seen in manufacturing. It appears that some of the winning attractions are those that have followed a reverse product development cycle to that normally understood in the production of commodities by Barras 1986. For commodities, development starts with the invention and introduction of the product, then qualitative process innovation, which is the setting up of the manufacturing systems or capital widening. And finally, quantitative process innovation that takes the form of improvements and rationalization of the product system for mass supply or capital deepening. In the case of the majority of attractions, the reverse appears to be true. Products either exist in the natural world under the physical environment, or they are at the end of the supply chain where they have been developed for other purposes and in other economic sectors. They are then adapted to provide a visitor experience with the aid of new communication techniques. In essence, the reverse product development cycle, when applied to visitor attractions, is trying to minimize the risk of failure through building imagescapes around already well-received environments, artifacts, commodities, or services so as to call to mind positive images or happenings and then communicating these to the market. These may be termed reproductive imagescapes for many cultural resources, monuments, and works of art which are now venerated by certain segments of the visitor market. This was not always so. While imagescape association can be seen as a significant ingredient in the popularity of an attraction, there is also the question of fashion and taste. Fashion exists and is encouraged in the branding of everything that is purchased, resulting in the obsolescence of commodities and service provision long before their use of value is exhausted. For the conclusion, when dealing with visitor attractions, it will be readily appreciated that the number of permutations to do with the variety of imagescapes that can be found at Table 2.1, organizations that can be found at Table 2.2, and ways of classifying attractions are immense. From an innovation perspective, a useful classification is to place attractions on a scale that has at one end those that have been built or designed for visitor purposes, which are in the minority, and at the other, resources and facilities that are neither for visitors nor can be adapted for them. The bulk of attractions would then be spread out between these two poles. This in return is linked to the pattern of ownership and the multiple objectives that beset different ownership structures. Once attractions have been adapted for visitors, then pressure builds up to interpret success in terms of the quality of the experience, visitor numbers to capture the spillover benefits of visitor expenditure, and where admission is charged, some level of financial viability. The latter brings the non-profit sector closer to the workings of commercial operators. Interpreting the development of the visitor attraction product 33. Under presumption that visitor numbers are a performance target, key attraction demand concepts, the market, imagescape, and location, and their linkages have been identified, noting that for the majority of attractions, their location is already prescribed by circumstances. This in itself has inherent dangers to do with being able to reach out to the market, which in return throws greater weight on the market imagescape mix that can be found at Figure 2.3. The degree of uncertainty associated with the level of innovation and the need of develop an imagescape at whatever level of attraction which demand is more or less continuous through the universality of its popularity. While this is readily accepted in the case of entertainment attractions in the museum world, the commitment to popularizing the product has raised concerns about overstaging the experience, in the sense of being too technologically driven, overemphasizing the media rather than the message embodied in the resource base. Within the commercial sector, attractions that are flourishing are, as a rule, those have followed the reverse product development sequence, namely the creation of reproductive imagescapes from product designed for other purposes and in other industries. Similarly, in the not-for-profit sector, the reverse product development model supports the observation that award-winning museums are those that have good collections and use technology to add value to the experience. To take the technology route alone is to embark on a fashion cycle that may be unsustainable in the longer term, though this route is not to be confused with major museums that subsequently update or renew their various departments as a matter of course. A sufficient condition for successful innovation in attraction development concerns the creation of imagescapes that have strong associations, are different but not too different, and are flexible enough to encourage visitors to return. Avant-garde or anticipatory imagescapes have a high profitability of economic failure, although they may be judged to have significant cultural values. This implies that non-market models of resource allocations are needed for many such attraction developments to occur, as can be seen in the various funding arrangements for the performing arts. So that concludes Chapter 2, Interpreting the Development of the Visitor Attraction Product. This presentation is based on this book, Managing Visitor Attractions, New Directions, 2nd edition 2008, published by Butterworth Heinemann Elsevier Imprint. Thank you so much.